I see Christmas candles on a Christmas tree.
What's all this crazy question they're asking me? This is the craziest party there could ever be. Don't turn on the lights, because I don't.
Hey, Donna, how are you?
Great. Merry Christmas. It's coming up in a few days.
Yeah, Thanksgiving was awesome. I don't know, how is it that I put weight on during Thanksgiving and you didn't?
You know what? I was made to be a Mimi, and which is a grandma, and I was running around with the grandkids so much,
You were.
and lifting up the others.
Every calorie you took in, you burned off because you said you lost weight when you came back. By the time you came,
I did. I was so surprised, but the Lord had told me that. So
I'm going to ask you the same two questions that we're asking the people on the street today. First one is, if someone's a good host, like if you're going to a party and you feel really welcomed and like it's just a nice, comfortable, welcome vibe, what is it that's happening that makes that possible?
I think first of all that the person is present, and so they're engaged and they're looking at me and they're hugging me and they're bringing me to a good chair to sit in. And there's food and there's something to drink. And for me, since I'm Hispanic, I like music playing and, where it's going to be a party. And then just the looking in somebody else's face and sometimes even hugging and kissing.
Let's say that you have a guest over for dinner and they've taken their shoes off and you're at the table and they're eating with one hand and with their other hand they're sort of fiddling with their bare feet. How does that strike you? What does that make you feel?
Is that really a question you asked the other people?
I did. That was literally the question.
It's not very, I'm thinking that it's not very clean because they're using their hand, they've got if they're fiddling with their feet, but you know what? If you're trying to make a reference to the Bible, they weren't fiddling with their feet. They had their feet behind them and they rested their weight on their left side and then they ate with their right hand. So it was a totally clean time.
Yeah.
Food.
Yeah. Although normally they would clean the feet at the door, I'm assuming, like
yes.
Your foot wash. So in this case, maybe it's not totally foreign because someone's doing the feet cleaning right there at the table, which is probably, and that was the analogy I was trying to make is there's a place for feet being clean and there's a place to eat, and the two shouldn't mix, right?
And never the twain shall meet.
Right. Except in this story, they do.
Yeah. So we're talking today about, we're in the second Sunday of Advent. We're talking about peace. And I know when we were looking at the sermon series, we're talking about Jesus eating with sinners and how he came into his ministry. And so the passage that I got to choose is the passage about the woman washing Jesus's feet with her hair and bringing an alabaster jar. And so it's a quite exciting time to be around Jesus at this time. He had started his ministry and he has been going out and speaking to the multitude. And in Luke 7:22, can you read that?
Well, John the Baptist is worried that Jesus isn't doing the stuff that the Messiah is supposed to do. So he sends messengers to Jesus. And it says in 21, at that very time, Jesus cured many who had diseases, sickness, and evil spirits, gave sight to many who were blind. So he replied to his messengers, go back, report to John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me.
Restoring sight to the blind. I can't imagine, since we had a car accident earlier this year, I had some issues with my vision. I've been in vision neurotherapy, and occasionally I've had a couple of incidences where my vision was a little mixed up, and that's just like a smidgen of a time of what it must have been like to be blind, especially back then when there was not Braille, there weren't services for the blind.
ADA,
and deafs.
American Disability Act, to
Yeah,
make life easier for people
and
with
so it
disabilities.
was extremely difficult. So when Jesus came, Jesus the Messiah came and he touched people that were blind, he totally revolutionized not only their heart, their life, their mind, but their circumstances, their way of living, their social status, everything. Can you imagine not being able to walk in such a rural kind of community,
Yeah, you can't get in the car or take the bus.
or you can't get in a wheelchair? We have a blessed woman that comes to church often in her motorized wheelchair, and she basically it's like a vehicle for her, and she's able to manage it now when it's cold, when it's raining, when it's
Dark.
nighttime. Those aren't the times for her to use it, but at least she's able to get to church and back. And
Freedom or the restrictions you have if you're blind or crippled. And Jesus came to set the captives free. And literally in this case, the freedom of mobility or sight is a very powerful physical representation of the emotional or spiritual freedom he brings.
yeah, and a social thing too, because it is true that when you are when you have sight, you're able to pick up verbal cues, you're able to really participate with people, but it's harder, much harder when you don't have your sight.
So tell us what's happening here.
Okay, so one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to his house, which is interesting. Why would a Pharisee invite Jesus to his house? Perhaps he wanted to have the guest of the year, somebody who was, in his mind, famous, somebody who was entertaining, somebody
I wonder,
who.
I wonder if he wanted to be like, hey guys, the crazy kooky country preacher, I actually had him over to my house and I asked him a couple of questions and you won't believe how stupid he was or whatever. Maybe it was that kind of a thing.